Hi, everyone. Welcome back to the Soccer Queens podcast, where we discuss everything female athlete performance training. However, today we are continuing with our college recruiting series. So, this absolutely applies to female and male athletes alike. So, I have one repeat guest, and we also have a new face today. So, I am going to have everyone introduce themselves, and then we're going to answer all of the questions you submitted on college recruiting. And we're just super happy to provide some free answers, some free discussion, and to get you guys started in the process. So, our new face today is Andre Luciano. So, Andre, if you just want to let everyone know what you're up to today, that would be super.
Well, great being here. My background is I was a former Division One coach for 25 years. I was 18 years. I was the head coach at Northern Arizona University, and then I spent time at University of Arizona, Washington State, and Utah State. My playing background was at Indiana University and also at Yavapai Community College. And I also spent 2 seasons at Yavapai Community College as a head coach.
Wonderful. Don, do you want to remind everyone what you're up to?
Yeah, hi everybody. It's great to be here again, Erica. So Don Williams. Now I run the Americas for Sports Recruiting USA. So everything from Argentina to Canada. And prior to that, I spent 22 years coaching in college. Very short stint coaching pro, 1 year. I don't talk about that much, but I coached. I was very fortunate to be able to coach at the junior college level, NAIA level, D2 level, Division III level, all on the West Coast. And yeah, and I've been at soccer for. I realized the other day this is my 50th year in the game as a player and as a coach. So yeah, been around a while.
We have a wealth of playing and coaching and recruiting experience on the panel today. So we're going to jump right into your questions. I'm going to start more with the more specific questions. So the first one is, what are college coaches looking for in goalkeepers?
Andre and I are both goalkeepers. Andre, why don't you start this one off? Kick this one off for us.
Well, I think first and foremost, I think they're looking for a player that has presence in the box, in the 18-yard box, who is a great organizer defensively, good communicator. But I think the biggest thing is, right now is I want somebody that's going to keep the ball out of the back of the net. I don't care, how they do it. I want somebody that has the ability to be a consistent shot stopper and every once in a while to pull off the incredible save that's going to keep us in the game. Also, somebody that is dominant in the air. That's really great. That's a big thing in Division One soccer, both on the men and the women's side. And in the modern game, you need somebody that's really a good distributor. They've got to be a field player in terms of their footwork and the ability to connect both short and long with their distribution. So more than anything, I think that you need a complete player, not just a goalkeeper anymore, but someone that can come in, you look around, and you're like, this person's got things under control. And I always talk about goalkeepers being a coach on the field, not only just a goalkeeper, but they also have to be a coach on the field.
Goalkeeping position almost identical. Maybe it's the era we grew up in, who we were coached by, who we were influenced by. But yeah, the first thing is, he just said, a complete player. You've got to be a soccer player to be a goalkeeper in the modern game today. You've got to be able to play the game and see the game as well as the field players do. The other thing is, for me, one of the big things is at the higher levels is not giving up second chances. So we see a lot of punching the balls away, and there are times when it's absolutely necessary. We see a lot of tipping over the top, which at times is absolutely necessary. But whenever possible, to stop their play dead in its tracks by holding onto that ball in traffic, and of course on dives, on saves, whenever possible. So the goalkeepers that can add those extra elements to the game can move up to the higher levels, because at the higher levels, that every time we don't hold the ball, it's a second chance or third chance for the other team to score. And then everything that Andre said, I agree.
Okay, those were some great answers. Let's move on to the next question. ID camps. So, how do you know if coaches are truly interested in you and they're not just sending out fluff to just attend a camp or to get you to visit the campus? How do you know they really want you on the team?
Andre, I'll start this one out and then you jump in here because I know you'll have a lot to add to it and I know I'll miss some things. So, first thing is the age, right? So, they can't walk up to freshmen and sophomores. So, don't expect as a freshman and sophomore to be recruited at a camp. You might stand out and you might make it to what we call the war board, right? There's a war board. It's either virtual or actual whiteboard in every coach's office in the nation in virtually every sport. And it's a listing of players in positions that they will need to fill in the future that are interesting and that they will be tracking. So you might make it up under that, but you're not going to be approached. But after your sophomore year, June 15th, and going into your rising junior year, you can be approached by coaches. And if they are not walking up to you at a camp and go, so what are your plans? What do you think? What are you studying? What do you want to do? What do you think of the campus? We're interested in you. They can do that. And if they're not doing that, then you're not an immediate recruit. Most likely, most likely. Some coaches will make a point of not talking to anybody at a camp. I don't know who they are personally. That's not the way me or my buddies operated. But if they have a policy of emailing after the camp, then they might do that. I actually do have one of my clients that happened to this past week from, I think it was the West Virginia camp, and they emailed him afterwards and said that they were interested. So it does happen, but they will contact you. That's how you know if they're interested. If you don't get contacted by those coaches, then they're not interested or that interested. What's your opinion, Andre?
Well, I look at camps maybe a little bit differently just because having operated big college camps over the, my 26 years. And then also, I was fortunate that I was exposed, uh, to how a camp should be run. And that was Jerry Yeagle at Indiana University. At one point, we were generating 600 kids per week for 4 weeks. So that was 2,400 kids at a camp. But it was not an ID camp. It was from U11s all the way through U18s. And so those camps were a little bit different. And I think that the modern trend now of elite camps, ID camps, that's a little bit different. That's a different approach. My thought process with camps was that uh, I would have two different types of thought process on players. Number one was if I was seriously looking to recruit a player and I wanted to get him on campus, get him to interact with our players, get him to interact with our coaching staff, get to know our campus, what the dorms were like, what the facilities were like, and to get a general sense and a general feel for the campus, I would 100% tell them, look, I'm recruiting you. I like you as a player. I would love for you to come to camp just so you can get a feel of what we're all about. Okay. And then there is the other thought process in just having players to come in and add numbers to camp, right? And so I think if you are a prospective student athlete and you are looking at camps as a means to get recruited, my suggestion would always be target 4 to 5 different camps that you're really serious about and be really honest about your abilities. Because if you're looking to go to a camp that is bringing in, teams that they're loaded with national team players, that's going to be a hard place for you to get added onto just by going to camp on a one-day ID camp. And so that doesn't really make a lot of sense to me. So if you're going to go to a camp, go to a 3-day or a 4-day camp so you actually have a lot of time to get more exposure to the college coaches versus going to one camp. The other thing I would ask is what's your staff ratio to player ratio? If the camp has 100 campers and there's only 4 staff members, then you have 25 players per coach. How much attention are you really going to get in a 1-day or a 2-day camp getting evaluated by these coaches? I mean, you're literally, your first day you have 2 sessions, and in your second day you have 3 sessions. And so what is your bang for your buck in terms of individual coach attention? Most coaches, they have kids at camp, ID camps that they've already identified through tournaments and showcases, and they're just saying, hey, let's get you guys in. And occasionally, you're going to find some kids that you're surprised at camp, and you're like, oh my gosh, who's this kid? This kid came out of nowhere that I never, those are the surprises. That's the fun part of it. But I don't really think a 1-day camp really gives you the opportunity to get properly evaluated. It's either a closing deal, like, hey, we really, it's great having you here, we can have this interaction with you, or to be honest, it's a money making. You're bringing 100 kids in for $100. What's your value that you're going to get? I would say be really mindful of that. And then the other thing too is now, databases are being sold left and right, for after a showcase. And you have to understand that after a showcase, you're going to get bombarded by emails from college coaches. So my advice to any player in that situation is to go to their manager of their teams, ask them specifically who came to each game, and then cross-reference the coaches that were at the game with the camp information that they're getting. If there's a correlation between the two, odds are somebody probably saw them and they're interested in them, and okay, that's a legitimate thing. But if there was no correlation, and you're just getting getting bombarded by hundreds and hundreds of different camps. So, be mindful. And I always tell people this, and I know this is a really long-winded answer. Your first choice, pick your parents' alma mater. If your parents are really, they love the school and they had a great experience at that school, go to that school just to get a sense of like, hey, this is where my parents went. Let me see what this is all about, right? The second one, the school, your dream school, where you really would like to play, like that's your dream, your top end, just to get a taste of like, hey, if I'm not at the end of the week, if I'm not in that quote unquote all-star game or whatever they call it now, you're probably not going to get recruited by them. And then the third one is find out which camps have the most amount of outside coaches working that camp, because that provides you maybe 8 to 10 different opportunities to get evaluated by 8 to 10 different schools. That was the best part about my camp at NAU when I coached there, was that maybe the kid wasn't going to get recruited by me, but maybe they got recruited by another coach. And I would have, junior colleges, Division III, Division II, NAIA schools, some other Division I schools, working camps, and it worked out for those kids. And so for me, I always felt good about running a camp if other kids were able to get some exposure out of it.
Let's stay on the topic of camps. We, of course, got a lot of questions here. So let me see. We had a player DM us on Twitter, and she asked, should I send emails before I attend a camp? And she was concerned, am I sending too many emails? Is it too much? What do you guys say to that?
My feelings are, look, well, before a player goes to a camp, I recommend to them that they know that the coach has at least seen their highlight video and said, we want to see more of you. You're interesting. Okay. If players are going into camps cold, it's so difficult. As Andre said, can you imagine Indiana camp, 2,400 kids? And now he's talking younger ones, but there are, the Stanford camp will have, I think about 4,000 kids a year, and they're almost all older ones, trying to impress the Stanford camp staff. So that coach, at least one of the coaching staff, have seen your highlight video and say, I want to see more of you at our camp before. And then, a lot of players will send thank you emails afterwards to the staff. I think that's classy. I think anytime that somebody hosts you, I guess even if you're paying for it, they're hosting you, I think it's proper etiquette to thank them. I've heard players talk about sending, this would impress me more in today's society, send a card to their office in the mail snail mail a card, thanking them. I've thought about that a lot, that would impress me in today's society more than an email. And it's guaranteed to get into my inbox. Like, somebody's going to pay attention to that. Somebody's going to open that up. But either way, yeah, look, you're trying to get yourself recruited. Frequent contact is necessary because coaches are getting upwards of 1,000 emails a week, depending on the week, particular week, But if it's the week before an ECNL event or a surf event, every kid at the event is emailing that coach that they know is going to be at that event. So they're getting thousands of emails. And there's no way a college coach goes through all those emails. There's just no way. A lot of times it's clean out, refresh, clean out, refresh. You scroll through, you're looking for key phrases, key words, or key people that emails are coming from, and then the rest of it's just kids. Very difficult to sort through. So, I think the more frequently that you're contacting them, yeah, you're adding to their volume, true. But Andre, have you seen any more creative ways? Because you just recently retired. What kind of creative ways have you seen for players to get through to coaches?
The best example that I've ever used, I had a player named Sierra Cristiano that I played for SC Blues in California. And I was at the University of Arizona. I was an assistant coach. And she wrote me a handwritten letter in crayon. Every word was a different color. That to me just stood out. I'm like, you took that much time to write me a 2-page letter about why you wanted to play for me at the University of Arizona. And every word was in a different color. It was hard to read, but that showed me, number one, that she was creative, that she took initiative, that she really wanted to get noticed. And she came to the University of Arizona. And then when I went to Northern Arizona University, she decided to transfer up there. She was a 2-time player of the year for us. But out of all the players I ever recruited, that is the story that stands out the most. And Don is absolutely right. I talk a lot about right now, everybody's posting everything on social media. It's just too much. At what point was the coaches are going to blank out? And Don and I just had a conversation about this. Is our college coaches really sitting around looking at 9-second YouTube clips and saying, this is the kid that I want? Maybe they're sitting on a bus, in the middle of nowhere, driving back from a game, and they're just kind of scrolling through Twitter. But I don't really think that's the way to go about it. But I do think that a nice letter before camp, like, hey, coach, just letting you know I'm going to be coming in. I'm from this place. I play forward. I really look forward to meeting you, is a great way to do it. As the camp starts, to walk up to the coaches, say, hi, coach, my name is so-and-so from this place, introduce, shake their hand, look them in the eye, so that there's another point of commonality, right? And the third one during the camp, addressing the coach, say, hi, coach, just letting you know I'm having a great time. Something like that, so it stands out to the coach that they really pick up on the personality of the player. And immediately after the camp is over, send a note with a nice card, like a little card or something like that, just really to all 3 staff members. I think that goes a really long way.
Those were some excellent answers. So, guys, I hope you're taking notes and just thinking about some of the extra things that you can do that just really impress a coach and just leave a great impression. And I tweeted something today about having good grammar and professionalism in your emails. I don't know if you guys want to just touch on that briefly and how players should draft their messages. Any horror stories too?
Yeah. So the first thing is I'll look at it and I'm like, okay, there's no way a 15-year-old wrote this. I'm like, parents, let your kids write the emails, proofread it a little bit, but just let them be, kids. So if there's some grammatical errors in there, I take it for what it is. Sometimes, I'm like, okay, this is a 14-year-old or a 15-year-old. But if you're a high school senior and you're all over the map, I'm like, okay, let's really figure out, what's going on. But I think that knowing who the coaches are and spelling their names correctly, massive. That is a delete for me, automatic. If I would have wrong name, it was an automatic delete. It wasn't. I'm like, you have the internet now. It's so easy to look up stuff, information. Just make sure you have the proper coaches. I think that's critical. Spelling the name, of the school correctly. When I was at Northern Arizona University, I'd get, hey, really interested in the University of Northern Arizona. I'm like, well, you must not be that interested because you would know that we were Northern Arizona University, you know? And so those kind of little details, I think it does matter, because, we want people that just like, kids want to be wanted. We also want to be wanted by the right people. And so I think those little details really does matter.
Don, do you want to add anything to that
No,
one or?
no, that was great.
Okay, perfect. So Andre, you briefly touched on the social media discussion, and Don and I have tried to tread lightly on this topic just because we don't know really how effective it is, but we did get the question, does it help with getting seen or is it just extra noise? What are your thoughts on social media and college recruiting?
Well, I'm on social media a lot, so it's one of my platforms, and so I look at it two ways. Number one, I think it's great when kids post, "Hey, this is I'm going to be at this showcase," and that's just a good friendly reminder right before showcase that a kid puts their schedule out there. I'm like, okay, cool. This is I'm going to be at that game. I make sure I check that game out. But I do think that there is a current trend that's going on right now where everyone is posting tons and tons of content. And I do feel like you're spending so much time posting all these 9-second clips. Why not just target it and make it a 3-minute video and target the schools that you really want to go after and send an email to the coach and go be direct that way? Because I look at recruiting a little bit like it's like dating, right? You've got the first impression, right? Secondly, there's this courtship period of the recruiting process where you're trying to get the attention of the coach, and the coaches are trying to get attention, your attention as well. You're getting to know that person, you're getting to know the coaching staff, you're getting to know the school, and ultimately there's the proposal, right? The hey, we really would like you to be a part of this. We'd love for you to commit to come to go to school here. And then there's the commitment process, and then there's the marriage. If you are going to base your 4-year career on a tweet, that's to me, I just, it's great. You're showing me 9-second clips, but I'm like, I don't think you're really interested in my school. I just think you're fishing. And I want to know who the kid is. I want them to be really, really directed towards me in terms of what I want that attention as a college coach. Like, hey, Coach Luciano, I have 3 minutes of highlight film. I was hoping that you can take the time to maybe take a look at it. I feel like that works probably a little bit more. And I think that not every staff has 4 or 5 coaches, a director of ops that can sit around watching Twitter and Twitter feeds. Coaches are busy and their times are valuable. And so I don't know. I just feel like it's a lot of content, and there's so much content that everybody's short-term memory is like in and out. And so I've seen hundreds and hundreds of tweets in the last 2 days, and I can't remember a single player, with the exception of the kids that I personally work with, that I pay attention to.
Yeah, and the kids have to understand how social media feeds work. Okay, so you're being pushed in front of you into your feed a limited number of individuals that Twitter's analytics think are the most relevant to you. So if a coach isn't looking today, so if I'm on a road trip and if I go away, we leave Thursday night, we play Friday, we're recovering Saturday, we're playing Sunday, we're back Monday, and on Wednesday you sent out a tweet and I didn't quite catch it that morning because I was getting ready to leave. By Monday or Tuesday, that's long gone in your feed. We're not even seeing it. Inbox, email, better chance that it gets caught. As difficult as it can be to get through, I think you've got a better chance of getting through than you do in those feeds. And as Andre said, time is money. Your time is valuable, players. Take that time, that energy to really figure out what schools you fit into best from a playing perspective, academic perspective, that you can afford, that fit you best from a location and size perspective, and target those schools. I think your time is much better spent doing that than than spending your time on social media trying to get yourself recruited. Does it happen? I think it does. I know some friends that spend a whole lot of time on social media. They're from very small programs in areas of the country that aren't quite as well known as, say, New York or Los Angeles. And they are using every resource to them available to get their 15, 16 players that they have to have by contract. So I know there are people using it, but I don't think it's the majority of coaches. And the other no for me personally is tagging 5 or 6, 10, 12 programs all in one tweet. For me, that's the same as emailing and CCing 10 coaches from 10 different schools saying, I want to go to your school. Please look at my video. For me, it's pure spam.
Yeah, I just had this conversation with a client and their family. I said, listen, you want to post it, but do not tag only the schools that you want to look at it, because now you're basically telling all the other schools don't look at it. Tag NCAA, tag NAIA, tag NJCAA, but don't tag the specific schools, because you're basically saying, hey, everybody else, you don't matter. So you have to be a little bit more mindful of how you do it, and there's some education aspect to it. And it's a dangerous little line to cross if you start doing that.
I think you guys read my mind, because that was going to be my follow-up question was, should players be doing these general tags? And like most of the time it is just noise. And I'm so glad you guys mentioned that. It is like, okay, well, the other schools that you didn't include, that's not important at all. But what about if a player attends a camp and then they tag the university or the coach and they just say, hey, great time at this camp, thank you so much? Because I've seen a lot of that. So should players do that at least, or does it not matter? Or is the follow-up email more important?
I think that's appropriate. That's just showing. For me personally, I'm like, look, you just came from that camp. The coaching staff you're just like, hey, I just want to show my general gratitude and appreciation for the camp that you ran.
You guys mentioned earlier knowing your soccer ability before reaching out to a coach or going to a camp. And we had a player write in how she's just been doing her research on her dream schools, and she's reading current players on the roster and seeing all of their accolades, national team, ECNL, high school All-American. And she's a little unsure of herself. And she's like, well, do I need those accolades to play there? What do you say to that?
Accolades for me are simply, you've been acknowledged by somebody that you've got something going on. However, I know a lot of players I've coached that didn't have all the accolades that were fantastic players. So that in and of itself doesn't necessarily mean anything. But here's what I do know happens quite frequently, especially on the women's side, but it happens on the guys' side too. Player goes to camp and they noticed all the ECNL kids get put off in a group with the head coach. And maybe GA kids get thrown in there. And then all of the non-ECNL kids get thrown off into another group with another assistant coach. Players that have been pre-identified by the coaching staff, they've already seen them, get thrown off into a certain group. And it can be difficult if you are an ED kid. As East Coast people know what that means, but it's an East Coast league. They will get separated away from the ECNL kids until somebody from that group says, hey, this kid's special, send them over to the other group. So there will be that goes on based on, but as far as look, a brilliant player is a brilliant player. If you go out and you score 3 diving headers and 2 bicycle kicks, they don't care what league you played from. If you're a super technical, fast, strong, tactical player, they don't. I don't know a coach that really cares what league you're from. Uh, as I've said before, those leagues, those ECNL, the ECNLs and the GAs, they kind of grease the skids and make it a little bit smoother to get in front of the coaches. But it doesn't mean that because you have those accolades or those leagues, those acronyms behind your name, that you're automatic. It's not what it means.
I'm gonna flip it, right? So I'm gonna say I had 18 years as a mid-major in my conference that I had ECNL teams not giving me the time of day or a GA team not giving me the time of day, right? And so I had two choices. I either avoid it and not go to those games and not pay attention to it, or if I'm confident as a coach, I'm going to step up and say, hey, I don't, I'm going to recruit you anyways because I know, you guys are looking at Power Fives or whatever it is. Same thing goes for a player. You can go into a camp and say, you know what, I've looked at your roster. They're all national team members. Every player has these accolades, all that. I don't really care. I'm going to go in there. I'm just going to ball, and I'm going to have a great camp. And I know what kind of a player I am, and I know I'm going to have to step up to the plate, and I'm going to have to really bring it. And those are the players that you really like, right? Those are the players that, regardless of who the competition is around you, they can step up and they can play and they can take over a game. And at the end of the day, if I'm recruiting a player, I want a player that's going to take over the game regardless of who's out there. If there's a sophomore, a junior, a senior, if I see a freshman that just takes over a game, that's my player that I play. That's not the player that I'm going to say, oh, I can't play because you're not from this or not from that. You're going to play and you're going to have an impact. And so if you're going to go to a camp, I talk a lot about this in the recruiting process, is look at the rosters and figure out what the demographics are of the roster in terms of where they're coming from, and understand how much harder it's going to be for you. But if you have confidence and you feel like you're a player and you know what your abilities are, then go take a risk, right? No risk, no reward, right? And so that's why I always say, if you have a camp and you're like, dream camp, dream school, go for it. But you got to perform, right? And so a lot of it has to do with your ability to go in and showcase yourself correctly. And same thing with me as a coach, right? If I would go and recruit a coach, but I wasn't confident in my program, that kid's gonna, you're like, why would I want to go to your school if you're really not confident in who you are as a coach and as a program?
So the next question we got is on scholarships. So if you guys can just go into the numbers on scholarships actually given out in Division 1.
Right, it's maximum of 14. On the men's side, it's maximum of 9.9. So now where the confusion comes in is because American football, volleyball, basketball, women's gymnastics, women's lacrosse, Andre? And
Tennis.
I think tennis are what they call head count sports. So they will say to football, I think it's like 88. You have 88 maximum scholarships. When you give out $1, it's an entire scholarship. So nobody does that. It's a full ride. So they give them 88 full rides maximum at the Division 1A level. And so people get that confused with soccer and baseball and the other sports because we are equivalent sports. So what they're saying is, if your program's fully funded, you have an equivalent of 14 scholarships, divvy them up however you like. So when I was at Cal State East Bay, that's a $500 kid. That's a $1,000 kid. That's a $2,000 kid. That's a $5,000 kid. And then up to whatever tuition, housing, books, food would be, whatever that would be. Look it up on the school's website, right? They'll give you the cost of attendance. So they'll tell you that, Baylor University is $82,000 a year, whatever it is. So up to that. And so you get this equivalent number. Problem is, and not every school is fully funded. In fact, the majority of schools are not fully funded. Okay. So a school might have 2 scholarships, 5 scholarships. Heck, the Ivy League's all Division 1. They have 0 scholarships. And there are schools out there with 0 scholarships or 1. So that's how they work. So coaches will divvy that up in a way that builds their team. The trend has gone more away from this spectacular freshman who I think is going to make an impact on my program, gets a full ride, to yeah, I'll give you some money. We'll combine that with the academic money that you're getting, and you've got a really nice package for the school that's affordable to your family. And if you perform well your sophomore, junior, and senior year, I'll give you raises. I'll step raises. And so you do get a lot of seniors that aren't paying a nickel. If they're all American or all regional or all conference, significant impactors and contributors to the team, that coach doesn't want to lose those players and honestly just wants to reward them like a good employer wants to reward their best employees, makes an example of them in a good way. So I've noticed that seems to be the trend, is that athletic scholarships will step up, and so they'll be more heavily weighted towards the juniors and the seniors than they will be towards the freshmen. Now, there's always exceptions to the rule, right? This kid's on the national team, leading goal scorer. We're going to make sure that we get this kid, and it's going to take everything to get this kid. That happens too. But what I've seen is the trend seems to be, if the school can stack, so let's just rehash what that word means. It means if the school can combine athletic and academic aid, and not every school can. Some schools cannot stack. They require you to choose between athletic and academic aid. But if the school can stack, that those full rides that mom and dad are talking about that their kid got is because their kid got 80% academic money, 20% athletic money, and so now they're not paying anything. It is still a full ride to the school, isn't it? So nobody's lying, but just it's not all athletic money. What do you want to add to that?
Well, I mean, there's some conferences where I'm trying to think, Don, is that still true? Like, there's some of them that are 4-year scholarships, right? Like
So that's
some
an
conferences.
NCAA change, right? That's just a recent change that the NCAA made.
Yeah,
Where
I'm
they're
trying
thinking
to
about
remember if
4
it's
years.
still in effect or not. But
Yeah.
most conferences are year-to-year scholarships.
Yes.
So year-to-year financial aid, right? And so you have, your agreement is from, let's say, August 1, whenever it starts, preseason, all the way through the end of your school year. And so these are year-to-year scholarships, and they can change, right? Typically, most coaches are pretty good about keeping the scholarships the same or increasing, but you can lose your scholarship, if you're academically ineligible, or if you do something that, brings negative light to the program, or if you're just not doing what you need to do in order to, keep yourself where you need to be as a player. But some schools are 4 years, right? And I've seen it. I've seen some schools that they have 4-year scholarships where they'll say, hey, you're gonna be 50% scholarship. First year you're 100, second year 0, third year 0, last year 100. And so the average on a 4-year, it's a 50% scholarship, how people look at it. And so then some families are like, oh, I'm getting a full ride the first year, and I'm getting, but they tell everybody I've got a full ride. But the second year and the third year, you don't have one. And in the fourth year, you have one. And some coaches are really, really, they kind of figure out the system, and they're like, well, that's funny. Well, if the kid doesn't work out the second year and they transfer, it costs me nothing. Right? And so I'm going to front load the kid in the first year. I'm going to front load the kid maybe in the second year, third year, lower him, fourth year. And that's a negotiation between each kid and each coach. And it does happen at the Division I level. But you got to put yourself in the, you think about this, especially on the men's side, there's what, 210 programs, Don, maybe on the men's side, Division I. Think about 9.9 scholarships. That's 2,100 full scholarships. If everybody is fully funded, it's rare that anybody gets a full scholarship on the men's side. You have to be really, really special. And on the women's side, it's rare that if you don't have, this is what we talk about, the accolades aspect of it. If you don't have the specific accolades, your average scholarship is anywhere between 37 and 43% if you're getting a good athletic scholarship your first year. That's the cost of tuition. Somebody would say tuition. And then on the flip side, if you're a really good student and you're getting tuition covered, they might cover, room or partial board to kind of average that out.
Let's stay on this scholarship topic. So another question was, do coaches go back and forth about the scholarship offer, or do you not do that for college soccer? And what they offer is just what they offer. So I think what I'm gathering from that one is like, can you negotiate your scholarship money like a salary? I think that's how I'm reading the question.
Can I answer that one, Don, to start off
Yeah,
with?
please, Andre, go ahead, and then I'll
Okay.
add in if you missed.
So
Yes.
college coaches are really smart about figuring out if someone's leveraging them, right? And that's a dangerous game. Is if you go in and you start leveraging, hey, this is what I need, this is what I want, and you start nickeling, diming, 2% here, 3% there, 5% there. Coaches are smart. They know who you're getting recruited by. They know what the situation is. I think the best way to go about doing this, and Don and I talk a lot about this with SRUSA, and whoever we work with, we talk about what is your budget as a family? What's your hard number? Because college soccer is not going to the car dealership and trying to nickel and dime and get yourself the best deal on a car. Coaches have fixed amount of scholarships year to year based on what their roster is. They're not trying to. Most college coaches, if they're trying to offer you a scholarship, if they're offering you a scholarship, it's because that's what they have, and they need 2 or 3 other players, and they're going to try to stretch their money as much as possible. That is why if you are a 2.8 student or you're a 3.7 student, the coach will, and you're the same type of player, the coach will always go with the 3.7 student because they know they can get academic money and it's going to stretch the value for that kid. Okay. If you go into the recruiting process thinking, I'm going to try to leverage this as much as possible, you're going to lose out. Right. I got really lucky. I'll give you a quick story. So I was a JUCO player, a junior college player. I walked onto my junior college my first year. Second year, I got some money. And then I went and I had to go to a 4-year school, and I literally, my family didn't have any money. And I sat down with the head coach at Indiana University in a room, Jerry Yeagley, and he knew my situation ahead of time, my finances ahead of time. And he gave me an offer, and I said, Coach, I don't think I can make that happen just because I'm on my own. I'm 22, going to be 23, I'm on my own. I don't have the means to pay for it. He turned around and he said, give me 2 days. Let me figure out what we have. And he came back and he gave me the offer that I needed in order to go to school there. Right. But he knew ahead of time what my finances was in terms of where I was in my situation. He knew ahead of time, and he's like, he's not looking to leverage me. This is what this kid has. This is what the kid is going to need in order to come here. He's not going back and forth between these 3 different schools trying to get the best offer. This is really where he's at. And so parents, you need to be careful about what you do, because I did have like a situation like that. And my answer was, well, then you should probably sell that brand new car you just bought your kid and get them a cheaper car so they can afford the rest of college if they really want to be here. But don't, coaches pay attention to that. They pay attention to what you roll up in. I used to do official visits, and this is like a thing. We used to do the home visits, right? And I would travel, and I would look at zip codes, and I would look at real estate value, and I'd figure out this is what this family's income is. Now, if the family told me like, hey, I just lost my job, that's a different story, right? But I'm like, if you're trying to nickel and dime me for $2,000 or $3,000, I'm going to have an issue with that.
Honest, just lay your cards on the table, and you'll find the right school. If you're playing games, you're going to lose out. I had a client recently who lost out because the school that she really, really, really wanted to go to, dad fully insisted that if they really want you, they'll give you an athletic scholarship. Well, the school didn't have, the new coach had inherited a bloated roster where the money had been given out already, and the coach, when they were recruiting in new players, didn't have any more money to distribute. There was no money to go around, and dad thought the coach was playing games. Most college coaches don't play games. Some do, of course. I'm sure there's going to be stories out there and people saying, well, I heard about this coach. Yes, I'm sure it happens. But the vast majority of college coaches are just hardworking, honest people who love kids and want to treat them right and want to do what's best by them. So don't think that, as Andre said, it's a great analogy, Andre. This is not a used car lot, right? You're not looking at inflated prices that are going to be negotiated down. The school will take care of that on the academic end, okay? Because there are a lot of schools out there where it's a Lamborghini pricing, but the school is a Honda Civic, okay? And so they know that, and there's automatic adjustments. I think my son, for signing his name and filling out an application, got $8,000 at his school just for doing that. There are schools that's from the administrative end, though, of that school. It has nothing to do with the coach or the sports program.
So the last question is a juicy one. So one player asks, can I go from JUCO to D1, and how high are the chances I can make that transition?
I'm going to answer that one.
I'm excited.
All right. So, Don, should I tell my quick story?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
And I can back it up, by the way. I can vouch that this has happened for me as a coach with numerous kids up to Penn State University and the types of levels. Go ahead, Andre.
So in 1988, coming out of Las Vegas, I thought I was going to go to the local school. Like every goalkeeper from my high school and my club team went there. And, going through the conversations and my academics, I was just told, like, look, you're not a Division I player right now. You're not going to come here. And I didn't have any other options. And so I took a gap year. So I literally took a gap year, was working in a warehouse and was playing men's soccer, the local Hispanic league, and a junior college for a first year program walked up to me and said, hey, listen, my name is Mike Pantaleone. I'm starting a brand new new program called Yavapai College in Prescott, Arizona. Any chance you'd want to take an interest? We're gonna have a good team. And I'm like, there's no way I'm gonna be a JUCO player. That's so below me, right? Like I'm Division I, I'm all this. I took the brochure, and Mike knows the story, so he always tells the story too. I took the brochure, I threw it away in the trash can when he left. And so 3 months later, I'm working, and I'm like, I've got nothing going on. Let me call this coach again. He's like, look, you can come here, come take a visit. Tell me what you want to do. So spring break, I went down for a visit. He's like, look, you kind of waited, but this is where we're at with money. We don't have that much money. Would you want to be a part of this? I'm like, okay. So long story short, with the JUCO side of it. So 2 years, 1 loss, national championship, national player of the year as a goalkeeper, and years later, National Hall of Fame, right? Because of that JUCO experience, I grew another inch, put on another 15 to 20 pounds, played 40 games or whatever it was, the number of games, got a lot more training, a lot more exposure. And at the national tournament, I made my mark. So college programs had a need, right? At the time, Indiana University, Jurgen Summers had graduated, All-American. They weren't really 100% sure about their goalkeeping situation with their second and third goalkeeper, and the timing was perfect. And I ended up at the top men's program in the country on a really good scholarship, and was able to be a part of something that was wonderful. So for anyone out there that, number one, looks down at junior colleges, understand that, like 60% of the country goes to junior colleges in terms of school for the first 2 years. It gives you the opportunity to reset. If you start with a 3.0 GPA, you can reset with a 4.0 GPA by going to junior college, which is what I did. I had a 2.75 out of high school, went to junior college, graduated there with a 3.75. got 64 credit hours out of the way, was able to transfer, and literally came out of school with hardly any debt after 4 years. I played close to 75 games in my 4 year career, had a wonderful experience, and my best friends still are my junior college teammates and the guys that I played with at Indiana. And so I highly recommend it for the kid that doesn't have a lot of options, but number two, for the family that doesn't have a lot of money to invest in college. It is the cheapest way to start your education path is to go to a junior college. But because of the narrative that we've put out there on social media and everywhere else that Division 3, Division 2, junior college, NAI is so below you, you completely miss out on something that could be a life changer for you. And so it's an awesome way to reset. And if you're a great player, I mean, I played with guys that they're playing professionally afterwards. And so depending on where you go and what the support is, your experience as a junior college player can be phenomenal. And honestly, your academics is probably your first 2 years of academics are just liberal arts anyways. You're just taking liberal arts classes anyways, and it's going to be the same wherever you go. And Don, doesn't California literally tell their kids, if you're not a student athlete, if you can't go to a junior college for the first 2 years so we can get you into classes? Because that's the other thing too, is most schools now, it takes you 5 years because you can't get into classes.
Absolutely. And it's, look, I have this saying that you have to be willing to invest in yourself and bet on yourself. A lot of players are going directly to coaches and saying, I want to walk in the front door and I want you to bet on me and I want you to invest in me. And I'm not willing to prove myself. I want you to just give me everything right now. Junior college players are one of the highest in demand groups of players in the country. College 4-year coaches know this about a junior college player. Well, they made it through college level classes and balanced athletics, and if your grades are good, they did very well. They've proven that they can handle that athletics, that sports academic balance. They're older, they're more mature. Hopefully, if there was a party gene in them, they kind of got it out of the way as a freshman away from mom and dad a little bit. And so hopefully they're more mature, and generally they are. There are college rosters in this country, Division 1 college rosters in this country, that are made up of primarily junior college players. Junior college players are always interesting to colleges, and there's very few universities in this country that you cannot get into from a junior college if your grades are good. Very few. It's a small handful. But other than that, it's an incredible opportunity to play. So is it possible? Not only is it possible, you've increased your chances. And the other reason why you have increased your chances is just because of the sheer numbers. So as a freshman coming in, you're competing against roughly 500,000 kids. Once you've gotten in to college as a junior college player, as a transfer player, you've knocked it down to less than 50,000. So you've increased your odds tremendously by going into college, proving yourself, and taking advantage of that opportunity. And this is one of the reasons, by the way, I hear this complaint a lot about international players coming into our country. And we deal with not only domestic players at SRUSA, but we deal with international players too. Our international players are far more willing to bet on themselves and to take a roster spot at a junior college or even an NAIA with an understanding that if this kid does really, really well here, I'm happy to support them transferring up to another level. And so they end up taking the roster spots as transfers, as older players that American players are trying to get into as 17 and 18-year-old freshmen. And I have found with our domestic players that have listened to our advice, and when the time is right, taken those junior college spots, that the same thing holds true for them, that they're able to move up to a higher level of football, soccer, and make that transfer.
And then one more thing, Don, like in Erica, is what has always stood out to me is that coaches want winners. They want winners. If you go to a junior college program and you're winning consistently, that's a habit. And that's what you bring to the table. And that's, at the end of the day, that's what a JUCO player, a junior college player will bring, is if they're coming from a good program that consistently wins and goes to the national tournament, you're bringing in a player that knows how to win and who has a certain level of, their expectation is, this is what I have to do in order to win. And they know how to, they know how to fight and battle and do all these different things. And, and the junior college player probably will appreciate what they're getting at a D1 or a D2 or a D3 or even an NAIA school, because they've had the worst of the worst, because everything is on a budget, tight budget, shoestring budgets. So I think that a college coach is much more willing sometimes to say, you know what, I'm going to take a chance on a junior than a freshman, a proven junior than a freshman.
So everyone, don't write JUCO off and realize that it could be the greatest time investment, character investment, and even just athletic investment you've made. And just coming back to Andre's amazing story, I mean, he said not only he grew into a national player and was able to transfer to one of the best D1 programs in the country, but he also got his grades in order. He got his finances in order. And I think we need to really just delay our gratification a little bit and kind of humble ourselves and be like, well, what makes the most sense for my specific situation right now? Don't look around to what everyone else is doing. And please go back to the episode Don and I did on finding the right fit. We go over everything you need to look for and consider. And I think we definitely expanded on that in this discussion today. And this has been a really realistic discussion, but also a really encouraging discussion. So Don and Andre, it's been amazing having you guys on. And I know you guys are on Twitter, so I'm going to link your profiles in the caption below. Is there anything else you guys want to end with?
Andre?
Final advice?
Yeah, just real quick. The number one concern that every kid has coming out of college is student debt. Is your student debt. And like you were saying, you can't compare yourself to what somebody else's experience or journey is, or what their personal situation is, because you can take 18 kids in the club roster and there's 18 different stories, and what you see outwardly probably is not 100% what's going on internally with those families. And so the best bet that I ever put on myself was to go a route that I came out of college with zero debt. And that allowed me to get a head start. I mean, so much further. And, like it's just allowed me to do things that I never thought I would be able to. And then the second thing is pick a school that fits your personal, what you're looking for. I mean, if you just want to go to college and play college soccer, yeah, but ask yourself how competitive I want to be. If you're a super competitive person, go take a risk, take a chance, go shoot for the moon with your dream school. If it works out, great. If it doesn't, you know what? Pick yourself up and start again, somewhere else.
Don?
Yeah, thank you, Erica, for having us on again. I love having these discussions with you. This is our first Q&A we've ever done, huh? And this has been good. I think Andre wrapped that up very nicely. I don't think I have a whole lot to add to it, but thank you again for having us on.
Thank you.
Of course. And it's always a pleasure. And Andre, I think we might add you onto the panel from now on and have you back on again. So guys,
see why I wanted him here? You saw why I wanted him here, huh?
Oh,
He's
yeah.
got a lot of knowledge.
Fantastic. So much wisdom. And guys, if you liked Andre being here, like the video and we'll get him back on. But thanks again, you guys. And if you want to follow up with Don and Andre, check the caption below, follow them on Twitter. If you have a question, they're always open and looking at their DMs. So please follow up if you have any questions. So thank you for listening, and we'll see you on the next episode.